Hi, everyone, welcome in. Gonna give everyone another minute or so to get logged in, and then we will get started. Lots to cover today. Thanks for joining us. Everyone, welcome in. Okay, we have lots to cover today, so I think we will go ahead and get started as people start to file in. So thank you again for joining us today. We're really happy to have everyone here with us as we continue our educational material reviews for the Recycling Modernization Act. If you are new to these webinars, we do have recordings of our introductory webinars, which we held last year, as well as the recordings for our Batch 1A and 1B educational materials review webinars, which were held in January and February. So if you want a deep dive on how we got here, the recordings are available to watch at your leisure. And Emily will drop a link into the chat for you now, so feel free to bookmark that page and check out the recordings for anything that you may have missed. The purpose of this webinar is to serve local governments, service providers, and community-based organizations with information about education and outreach efforts. And today we'll be introducing the Batch 2 educational materials, in addition to concepts for the Batch 4 statewide motivational campaign. These two sets of materials each have their own feedback survey, which we'll provide more information on shortly. Today, we're going to start with introductions, provide an update on the education and outreach engagement process, and then dig into educational materials. We'll include an update on Batch 1A and 1B, and then give a first look at Batch 2 educational materials. C+C will then present Batch 4 statewide concepts, and we'll provide details about the feedback surveys that will be open to you following the conclusion of this webinar. But first, let's review some logistics for today. The chat is open as we're going to be asking attendees to let us know who's with us today. However, if you do have a question, we please ask that you use the Q&A function, as that will allow us to address some questions as we go along, and we do have a lot to cover today. We have many subject matter experts here today to help answer those questions. So any questions, comments, please use the Q&A. That is a different section than the chat. So we have a lot of team members on the call today, and I'll first hand it over to Alex Bertolucci with Circular Action Alliance to begin our introductions.
Thanks, Sam. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Alex Bertolucci, the Oregon Communications Manager for Circular Action Alliance. And as many of you probably already know by this point, the CAA is the producer responsibility organization here in Oregon that's going to be implementing the EPR program under the Recycling Modernization Act. Our team here in Oregon continues to grow as we ramp up for that implementation. Since the last E&O webinars, we've added 2 new members to our team, Matt Francis, who will be our materials management lead, and Crystal Moore joined our team as our PRO Recycling Center development lead. She may be a familiar face to some of you as she joined us from Waste Connections in Vancouver. The Oregon team deeply understands recycling and waste system and is ready to put that experience to good use as we approach the launch of packaging EPR here in Oregon. So this is the team to reach out to with questions, and you can find contact information on the Oregon page of circularactionalliance.org. Now I'll turn it over to Francesca with C+C.
Hi, thanks, Alex. I'm Francesca Davidson. I'm with C+C, and we've been selected to support CAA with research, branding, campaign concepting, transcreation, and implementation. We're based here in Oregon as well as Washington. We have a small office in Boston, and we were founded by partners, Julie Kollauer and Brian Cohen, almost 20 years ago. We're focused on behavior change marketing and public relations around positive social and environmental causes like recycling, water conservation, energy efficiency. And today we're a full service agency working, providing clients with research, behavior change marketing, multicultural marketing, events, outreach, digital and social strategy, advertising, and public relations. And I am joined today by two members of my team who I'll let introduce themselves, starting with Vandy Kindred.
Cool. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Vandy. I am creative director with C+C, a writer by trade. Been with C+C for a good 10 to 11 years, and I've been working in the recycling realm for probably a good 20 to 25 years at least. I'm gonna turn it over to Melinda right now, who's gonna talk to you about herself for a little bit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melinda Molina. I am the account director of the multicultural team at C+C. I've been with the team for about 4 years and also have been working in the recycling space for about the totality of those 4 years. But I'm very excited to be here and share a little bit more about what we're doing.
Thank you all so much. And for anyone that is not familiar with the Recycling Partnership, we pride ourselves on being a team of experts, practitioners, and thought leaders with real-world experience who are delivering on our mission of building a better recycling system. And we have several folks with us again today to help us run the show and answer questions you'll be interacting with. From my team, I will hand it over to Emily to introduce herself.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Krieger. I work with the Recycling Partnership. And for this education and outreach work, I'm handling the project management on behalf of this work stream. So thanks, and hand it back to Sam.
Thanks, everyone. All right. Hello again. My name is Samantha Longshore, and I'm a community program manager for the Recycling Partnership. I'm here on behalf of CAA to assist with education and outreach efforts during this coordination phase. And it's been a fun and wild ride. So thank you to everyone who's been joining us all along this process. And I hope to see some of you in person at the AOR conference in June. So I'll be coming back to Oregon soon, and I hope to see you all there. So you've heard who we are, and now we would love to get to know each of you a little bit more and learn who is with us here today. So it is that time again, our favorite time to jump into the chat. So please let us know who you are, what community or organization you're representing, and your role. So if you go ahead and jump in your name, your organization, your role, would love to see who is joining us today. Hi, Angie. And county groups. Lots of folks on the call today. Excellent. All right. Everybody understands this assignment. I appreciate that. So let's keep that going. Please feel free to keep introducing yourselves in the chat, letting us know who is here today. We appreciate that, everybody. And while you're introducing yourselves, we are going to dive in. We'll start with an update on the engagement process and a reminder, if you want more detail on how we got here, make sure to watch the recordings of our previous education and outreach webinars if you missed them. Emily will drop a link to find the recordings in the chat one more time for folks who may not have been able to join right on the hour. And here we have a high-level overview of the phases for education and outreach implementation, which are outlined in CAA's Oregon program plan. And this helps to illustrate and reinforce the message from DEQ that the first program plan will be a time for continued consultations between CAA and interest holders. As we've mentioned before, this effort really isn't a light switch on-off change, but composed of rolling phases. So working to help build upon each other by providing new information, but then also tweaking, reinforcing, and being able to give different audiences what they personally need to meet them where they're at. The Batch 1A educational materials and Batch 1B, which we are actively working through your feedback on right now, are perfect examples of how this is happening in real time, with the ability to release materials, gather feedback, and then make adjustments to improve them. As a reminder, various channels, including digital and non-digital avenues, are being utilized to deliver the education campaign and materials so that we can reach everyone through methods that are available to them, such as materials they can have in hand, over the air, in print, and several other forms. We want this to be as inclusive as possible. And today we will introduce our last set of localized instructional materials, which you can see on the left-hand side of this diagram with batch 2. And then C+C will be sharing that first look of batch 4, statewide motivational messaging, which you see on the right. In the table here, you'll find our schedule for educational material reviews. The Batch 1A and Batch 1B reviews with local governments and service providers are complete, and we are continuing to work through the 1B feedback right now. Today, we'll be reviewing Batch 2 and Batch 4. CAA recently selected the website agency that will assist with Batch 3 statewide motivational materials, and they'll be moving forward soon with review coming at a later date. If anyone is not yet on our education and outreach mailing list and isn't receiving emails about these opportunities, we please ask that you fill out the contact form for this group. Emily is going to drop a link to that form in the chat. If you've already completed this form, you don't need to do so again. We do get a few more folks trickling into that form, so we do like to share it. And as a reminder, this form is for those that are distributing education at the local level. So if we have producers or other organizations with us today that don't serve those roles, please note that this form wouldn't be relevant for you. And soon you'll be hearing more about the Education and Outreach Portal. Training sessions for local government and service provider end users will occur between mid-May and early June. So please keep an eye out for those update emails with upcoming opportunities. We'll hold 2 webinars. The first will cover general onboarding, such as creating an account, exploring the portal, downloading static assets, and accessing and verifying community profile information. The second webinar will review how to customize educational materials using dynamic templates, such as making some of those local specific additions. In coordination with the material reviews shown on the previous slides, this flowchart helps to illustrate an approach to educational material design modeled for continuous improvement. You can think about this in 2 primary phases. Using Batch 2 as the example, the first phase begins with drafts provided in English. We'll host the review webinars twice per batch material set, so folks have a couple opportunities to attend live or watch the recording before completing the feedback survey. Feedback will also be gathered through the ORSAC E&O committee. I believe we have some members joining us today, and additional CBO consultations. With this feedback, the materials will be revised and then transcreated. In the second phase, the materials will be released in all languages per the program plan schedule, and CAA will lead ongoing feedback during the first program plan that allows for monitoring use and gathering feedback, adapting and updating based on that feedback to fit the needs in an ongoing capacity. As a reminder, here are the 4 batches of educational materials from the program plan that will be moving through that continuous improvement model. And today we'll be reviewing the Batch 2 educational materials, which includes a social media toolkit and press release template, as well as a variety of handouts, mailers, and signage, as well as concepts for the statewide motivational ads in Batch 4 presented by C+C. Before we get to those new materials, we'll provide an update on the Batch 1A and Batch 1B educational materials. Included for your reference here is the remaining timeline for Batch 1A. As you can see, we are approaching the April release date, where all Batch 1A materials will be transcreated in all non-English languages identified in the program plan. At release begins another iteration process for ongoing feedback and continual improvement of these materials. The release of Batch 1A will look very similar to the release of the Batch 1A beta materials in February, and these will be housed on recycleon.com. As a reminder, we please ask that you archive or delete any files used during your feedback of the Batch 1A betas so that you have the latest and greatest. You'll find in the Batch 2 material reviews occurring later that we make several references to the signs being similar to the recycling guide. So we wanted to show you the latest version of the guide, which has even more updates since our before and after reveals in the last webinar. This new layout allows for 12-point font for contaminants and adds a QR code to scan for other languages. Each language that you see listed in English will be translated in the final copy. We are actively reviewing the feedback provided for 1B and making revisions so that these materials can move into transcreation. As with Batch 1A, CAA will release a summary of feedback received with an explanation of adaptation applied. And now we will move into the Batch 2 educational materials and the feedback survey available now. With this webinar, the official feedback surveys for Batch 2 and Batch 4 educational materials are live and will also be distributed via email with this webinar recording. Emily will be dropping links to the surveys in the chat, so feel free to bookmark these so you can complete them by Friday, March 28th, or start exploring them today after the close of the webinar. Please note that there are 2 unique surveys, one for Batch 2 and one for Batch 4, but the process for each is exactly the same. Both of the surveys are in Microsoft Forms, which you'll be familiar with from the USCL Communications and Batch 1A and Batch 1B surveys. In the survey descriptions, you'll find a link to a downloadable folder containing the assets for review. And I'll walk you through where to find those in just a moment, but we wanted you to know that we are showing examples of these assets today during our presentation, but you will be able to download them after the presentation to be able to spend some more time with them as you prepare your feedback. We just don't want you to feel rushed, so you can review them at your leisure. So I'm going to switch my screens very quickly to show you what these look like. So here, again, we have the Batch 2 survey. So these are really going to start looking very familiar for you, still in Microsoft Forms. And then in the description for the survey, what I really want to call out here is that you have the Lightbox folder to download the drafts of Batch 2 that are available for your review. Here is what that Lightbox is going to look like. So there are 11 different downloads for you to take a look at. And then in Batch 4, C+C has provided this survey. Again, it's going to look very similar, but take a look at different materials for Batch 4. Once again, in the description, you will find this link to a box folder to download the materials for review. When you click this link, this is what that folder is going to look like. So a little bit different than the files coming from the Recycling Partnership. Again, one is in Lightbox here, and one is using Box. But again, the same process. So open those surveys and you will find those materials for review. Now we'll head back into the PowerPoint. So again, please note that the folders that I showed you with those documents in them will close after the survey deadline. Again, both of the surveys are due Friday, March 28th, so please submit your feedback no later than that date to allow us to begin reviewing. And we encourage anyone that doesn't attend this webinar or the repeat webinar next Tuesday to watch a recording, which we'll also send out via email. And just a reminder that the webinar being held next Tuesday is a repeat of today's content. So if you're here today, you don't need to be in attendance next week. So please submit your feedback on these materials by next Friday, March 28th. And a quick note that we do ask if several local governments are working together on written feedback, that they only provide one response with all of the names of the contributors. And if you have any unique feedback in addition to that combined feedback, go ahead and drop that unique feedback into your own online survey. This really helps us to streamline the feedback process and allows more time for incorporating that feedback. In Batch 2, you have 11 unique pieces that we'll cover today, including messaging tools and basic material instructions. You'll see that some of these also include a couple different types or versions, which we'll walk you through. And please note that there are some places where you'll see placeholder text for not yet confirmed Spanish or other translations. So just a reminder to please focus on the English portions, as all text will be fully transcreated in the next phase. And we will start with our messaging tools. The first is a press release template. The press release serves a very similar function to the newsletter copy that is part of the Batch 1A materials, in that its key messages are what the public can expect, why this effort matters, and what actions they can take. This material serves as a template to give your local government or organization a head start on your public communication efforts. In this template, you'll find areas and content that you can select in order to reflect your local experience and to use for a July launch or in the future based on various types of scenarios experienced in your local recycling program. The next messaging tool is a social media toolkit. And you'll see in the example image, the toolkit includes plug and play images and text, so you can mix and match between them as you see fit. Topics include the Recycle on Oregon campaign launch, local scenarios that were covered in the messaging timeline guide, and contamination reduction tips. In the final kit, images will be provided in 2 sizes so that they are suitable for Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Please note that later, C+C will also be sharing social posts that will be deployed by CAA for statewide ads. But the kit you're viewing right now that's included in batch 2, you will be able to deploy locally. We'll now move into our basic material instructions, starting with the bill insert. This is a low-cost outreach method because it can join existing utility billing or other messaging to your community. It could help to supplement the announcement of the USCL or be used for ongoing education reminders so folks know what they can and can't recycle. The example you're seeing here is for communities that accept glass. It's designed for English on the front and a second language on the back, with placeholders throughout for local contact information, along with the accepted materials and top contaminants. The next materials for review are cart tags. There are 2 types of cart tags for review in the cart tag file. The first is a basic cart tag with accepted materials on one side and a recycling best practice tip on the reverse. The intended purpose is general education for curbside collection households. This cart tag can be utilized with education and outreach printing funding. Within that file, you will also find what we call the OOPS tag. This tag has the same accepted materials on one side, but on the reverse, you have top contaminants next to checkboxes so that this can be utilized for a cart tagging anti-contamination effort. Please note that this is provided as a courtesy to local governments and service providers to ensure a consistent look and feel across materials and projects. However, because these are mainly focused on contamination, the cost of printing is not covered by CAA education and outreach funding. This could be reimbursable through the $3 per capita of contamination funding per community. Next, we have a door hanger design. You'll see the content is the same as the educational cart tag with accepted materials and recycling best practice information. Door hangers can be particularly successful for education in multifamily dwellings where mailboxes may not be checked as often and direct-to-door feedback can be really effective. And due to the higher density of these households, this more labor-intensive option can be delivered quite efficiently. These could also be updated for future use when new collection systems or depots come online. The info card we refer to as the jack of all trades. This is a versatile piece that can serve many functions. We recommend this piece as something that can be sent annually to remind folks of what's recyclable in your community. And the mailing panel can theoretically serve different functions. Paired with the style guide that was provided in 1B, this mailer could help introduce the statewide campaign, target a top contaminant, or tell households about an upcoming anti-contamination project. Right now, the design that will be available for printing with education and outreach funds includes a recycling best practice, but we wanted to share ways it's been used in the past to help you flex your creative muscles in the future. In this design, we have a no bagging recycling best practice. Our next mailer is the brochure mailer. Please note that the file for your review includes 2 different designs. The first is for programs launching the USCL with a new curbside service, and the second is for those that have existing collections in place. This mailer is larger and more detailed as compared to the info card mailer, and it serves as both a mailer and a poster to hang on the fridge or near receptacles by property managers in multi-unit dwellings. It is designed to fold, and on the exterior, you have general RMA and recycling best practice information with accepted materials and top contaminants on the interior that could be hung up as a poster. And we will wrap up batch 2 with several different signs. These signs and stickers can be used for commercial and multifamily recycling enclosures. As such, we recommend waterproof materials that are appropriate for indoor and outdoor use for flexibility. And you'll find several different unique layouts and different sizes to serve various needs. The first version here is the large sign, which is 24 by 36 inches in size. This is similar to a signed version of the recycling guide, and it could also be used at USCL depots. The next 2 signs we'll show are smaller versions that could be used for internal or external containers. Technically, the large sign we just showed could be used internally as well if somebody wants to make a big statement in a recycling room off the parking garage. So just some different examples of use. This 8.5 by 11 poster is a great option for placement near trash or recycling chutes or elevator lobbies in multifamily spaces. The decal, which is 8 inches by 8 inches, is the smallest version available and is meant to be a very simplified version of the recycling guide where the images take precedent. You'll also find a unique decal for class-specific containers. And our final material for review in batch 2 is the USCL depot container, which was prepared by CAA for your review. If your community will collect source-separated materials at USCL depots, these signs may be placed on or above a container or mounted on an A-frame to inform community members about what belongs in each bin. They are currently designed to be 18 inches by 24 inches and will be material specific. Here we display only the signs for plastic and metal, but a sign will be created for each material that may be collected source separated. As a reminder, the 24 by 36 inch large sign shown earlier could be used for commingled containers. And included here is the review process for the batch 2 educational materials, where we are currently in the webinar and survey phase. You'll find the iterative process after your initial review to continue providing feedback for incorporation in an ongoing capacity. As a reminder, these materials have a release date in mid-May. And now I'll hand it over to Alex Bertolucci and C+C to walk through a first look at batch 4 statewide motivational materials.
Thank you, Sam. I'm very happy to see how these batch 2 materials are coming along, and I can't wait to see how the finals turn out. So let's see. Let's talk about the timeline for batch 3 and 4. So as Sam mentioned at the top, we are still in the process of nailing down dates for the webinar or that batch or website, not webinar, or batch 3 materials. We will share those as soon as we have them ready. Today is the start of the second review process for batch 4, or the statewide ads you'll see here in a bit. The other review was in December at the Oregon Recycling Council. Hopefully you'll see your feedback from the first round of reviews incorporated into some of these materials. C+C's done a great job on that. Unlike the other batches you've seen today, the materials for batch 4 are harder to create and then allow for review and then go through another round of edits because many of them are audio recordings or videos and it just doesn't work that way. So for these reviews, we're going to share the slide deck and creative briefs that you'll see today, and we asking for your feedback on those. We'll incorporate that input and create ads from there. So this will be the last time CAA seeks feedback on these batch 4 materials. The social media components of this batch will be deployed beginning in mid-June, and the ads will start in August. So now I will turn it over to C+C to share what they have.
Thanks, Alex. So we always like to start with the strategy and the thought that went into developing a campaign to motivate our audience to take action. Some of these slides up front are going to be review for some people, but wanted to make sure to provide that context. So as a behavior change agency, we always think about brands and campaigns in terms of a life cycle. And that's a behavior change continuum for our audience. So we have to always begin with awareness. Recycle On is going to be totally new to Oregonians. So we really need to start with awareness and understanding of what it is. And this big program change that's coming and going to be rolled out over time. And then this Recycle On brand and campaign will address other behaviors that will help promote participation and reduce contamination over time through different behavior change campaigns and initiatives, and kind of move our audience around this behavior change continuum or life cycle. And we did do audience research with English and Spanish speakers across the state of Oregon. It was a large quantitative survey, and we used that to help inform our strategy. And we know with our audience, we're addressing a very large group of people 18 plus who speak English or Spanish in Oregon and who need to recycle in their day-to-day. We learned that they already think it's important. They feel that they know how to do it. They've been doing it a long time, but that they can find points of confusion. And what we really want to do with this campaign is help them be motivated to be part of making a better recycling program in Oregon. We want to be friendly, approachable, helpful, enthusiastic, and we want to focus on the benefits that this program brings to the state. So a few of those are listed here, and we'll talk about those in more detail in the materials that are to follow. So back in December, our team put together an initial concept called We've Got This Oregon, and we presented it and got some feedback on it. So just wanted to introduce where we started. And that was, this campaign has in essence stayed largely the same, but we did make some adjustments based on the feedback that we got towards the end of last year. And this campaign really hones in on the pride Oregonians put into everything they do, including recycling. It features places and people across the state and how they're putting that pride into action around the topic of recycling. So just wanted to provide a quick summary of the feedback we received after presenting the initial concept. We've Got This Oregon, and there was some concern around the lack of clarity about who we was in the scripts and messaging. So we've worked to refine that and make it clear the parties that are involved in this change and the program. People felt that maybe We've Got This was a little overconfident or over promising. We also wanted to make sure the benefits that are in the messaging of the advertising are really applicable across the state, since this will be a statewide campaign. We know that our haulers, our local governments will also be providing information. So that script said that CAA's website was the one trusted place, and so we've adjusted that. It also listed some specific addresses, and people suggested that that may be confusing and it'd be better to focus on landmarks or regions of the state instead. And lastly, in the visuals, we really want to clearly connect that this is about recycling and not show single-use plastics in our imagery. So this slide really covers the main benefits that are applicable across the state. You'll see these carried through in the materials that you're going to see my team present. But basically, a lot of these came from the input that we received from interest holders during that first review process. And so we really want to make sure we hit on the change that is coming and that it's going to be rolling out over time, and it's really going to make the recycling system better. Talk about the people who are involved, local governments, recycling companies, and brands who are going to work together to implement and fund these system upgrades. The main change that people will see, and that's the changes to the recycling list, which will happen over time. And that we will be providing simple recycling information so people know what to do and they can recycle with confidence. We want to touch on the benefit of transparency this program brings to the state and understanding where materials are going and knowing that they will go on to live a second life. That we're expanding access and services across the state. So people who didn't have service before will. And just kind of that general summary message that this will bring consistency, transparency, and new funding to the recycling system, make it simpler, more trustworthy everywhere in Oregon. And as Alex already mentioned, these materials will be available. The brand launch advertising will be available on or before August 1st. So what you'll see my team present is a video ad script with key frames, or key visuals that would appear in that video. And these will be similar to what you'd see. They're not the exact final images, but we want to get this group's input on the direction we're going in. Some social media ads, some banner ads, and a radio script. And once we gather input from this group, we'll be fleshing all of these out and making the final versions and all the many different types of ad versions that are needed to run the campaign. And we're also sharing a kind of a content outline of a social media toolkit. We'll go into more detail on that towards the end. But I will, this content outline really has the topics and the visual ideas that our teams put together. We want to have this group vet and provide input on them before we go into production. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Vandy Kindred.
Cool. Thanks, Francesca. We're going to dig into the work right now, and as has been mentioned, we're very much still in the conceptual phase, kind of heading into what we call pre-production and production. So everything you're going to see is exactly that. You're going to see storyboards with frames, as Francesca mentioned. You'll see some comps, things like that. We're not in the finished materials part yet, but you'll get a pretty good idea of where this is heading. And so if we can go to the next slide, we'll jump right into the video script. I'm going to take the video script line by line and then also visual by visual. Then at the end, I'll go ahead and read the whole script as one. So you'll get a pretty good idea of how it's going to work together. Basically, as you see here, we're going to take some landmark places that everyone knows in Oregon, like Crater Lake or the St. John's Bridge in Portland, the Painted Hills over in John Day. Places like that. But what we want to do is kind of tie everything together, all these big iconic landmark places, but also tied into like the recycling bin that's in your kitchen or the curbside recycling outside your house or business. And so what you're going to see here is just every corner of the state represented, whether by place, by people, and then with recycling as kind of like that undercurrent, as that recycling is getting better as we speak. So imagine opening on those shots, Crater Lake, St. John's Bridge, Painted Hills, and then you end on a recycling bin under a kitchen sink. And our voiceover, you will not see the person on screen, but you will hear this voice as we see all these beautiful shots of Oregon, both Eastern and Western. From the Cascades to PDX, from the Painted Hills to your kitchen, we recycle like we live here. And if we go to the next slide. So we're going to show shot of the Capitol, get to Salem, people on bikes. And again, just getting a full picture of what the state is all about and how recycling just fits in every corner of the state and how we're all about recycling here and that it is changing. So imagine that going on in your head, and the voiceover is going to read, that's why recycling companies, governments, and brands are all joining together to bring change to make recycling better. So we'll go to the next slide. And then once again, making sure that people understand that this is about recycling, getting that curbside recycling bin in the shot, going to something more of a central/eastern Oregon visual. So we do include everybody within the state, and also making sure that businesses are represented, and also as far as just recycling in general in all aspects, and then finally maybe the promenade at Seaside. So while you're seeing those visuals, announcer is going to say something like expanding services, so more people will be able to recycle. Work has already started, and you can find the latest updates at recycleon.org. Then our final frame on the video script will show you Mount Hood, shots of different types of Oregonians together. Again, catching Oregonians from every corner of the state. and then we'll have an end card at the end. But from Mount Hood to the bin under your desk, together we can do this. I'll go ahead and read the copy because it is a bit disjointed when we're talking about it like frame by frame, but you'll get the idea of how this works. From the Cascades to PDX, from the Painted Hills to your kitchen, we recycle like we live here. That's why recycling companies, governments, and brands are all joining together to bring change, to make recycling better. Like expanding services so more people will be able to recycle. Work has already started, and you can find the latest updates at recycleon.org. From Mount Hood to the bin under your desk, together we can do this. So hopefully you get a good idea of how this will all work. And these visuals, as Francesca said, these are there as suggestions. You know, when we get into production, we'll do one of two things: do deep dives into stock footage, and also figure out what we need to shoot and go out on location to shoot stuff. So anyway, I hope you got a good idea from that. Hopefully I read the script correctly and gave you a good picture of how this would work. If we'll go to the next slide, I'll just go ahead and show you some of the social digital things that we are thinking about. And first one, our good friends at Meta, ad for Facebook, Instagram. Our static or basically like a headline for the visual is recycling in Oregon is getting better. Just keeping it really generic and top line. And then our social copy will reinforce what we're talking about as far as recycling is getting better. And in fact, getting kind of specific about it. So we'll have a generic just campaign rallying cry up top, and then specific, in this case, about recycling access and services, expanding to places in Oregon that was without them before. More people doing more recycling. So you see how this would work. We would keep that top visual pretty consistent and then rotate out that bottom paragraph of social copy to get across what we want to get across. We'll go ahead and move to the next one. And then here's an example of other possible copy options that we can put in there as far as like recycling facilities will soon have more transparency, and you can trust that your recyclables will be made into new things. Recycle on Oregon. And once again, brands, governments, and recycling companies are joining to help fund and implement upgrades to our recycling programs. We're all invested. Recycle on Oregon. So quick overview of what we're thinking social headline copy wise. If we go to the next slide, then you will see what we're calling a carousel. And this is basically where we do 6 frames in a row. And it's a great opportunity to get across multiple messages, starting off with kind of like our unifying theme line: recycling in Oregon is getting better. Frame 2 would talk about access, meaning that more people are able to do more recycling. Then we get into shared costs, meaning that brands will help to fund recycling upgrades, simpler guidelines, and more people can recycle with confidence. And finally, more transparency, more assurances that recyclables are being made into new things. And then wrapping it all up with our recycle on Oregon, and then get the latest as a tagline to that. So that's our meta carousel, and I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly because I know that time is of the essence here. Banner ads and headlines, these are basically standalone banners. They will work on their own. And again, we have to be really simple because we don't have a whole lot of room to get across a whole lot of information. But in this case, we can talk about expanded access, better recycling, simpler guidelines would be the alt to this. There would be 2 other alts that we could use. Second alt, simpler guidelines, better recycling. Third alt, more transparency, better recycling. So again, not a whole lot of room to get across a lot of information, but it gives us pretty good reminder media to get across just top line thinking. And finally, I believe we have a radio script. This should look fairly familiar. It's a basic lift of the television. I'll go ahead and read it through one more time very quickly, and then we'll move on to the social media kit, the social kit. From the Cascades to PDX to your kitchen, we recycle like we live here. That's why governments, brands, and recycling companies are all joining together to bring change to make recycling better. As in trusting that your recyclables end up in the right places to be made into new things, and having brands help fund the costs of recycling. Work has already started, and you can find the latest updates at recycleon.org. From Mount Hood to the bin under your desk, together we can do this. As I said, pretty similar to the video. We do have a little bit more little bit more space and time, so we're able to put one more, just a little bit more conversation in there to make it sound more natural, and but it still works pretty well on its own. And that is what we're thinking as far as like video, social, radio campaign, and we welcome your input on this. Look forward to it. And I'm going to turn it over to Melinda right now.
Oh, Melinda, it looks like you are on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you for flagging. I was just saying that the multicultural team is embedded in the creative process from the very beginning. So we review creative briefs, concepts, the brainstorming sessions, and flag anything that might not be relevant for diverse communities. And this campaign is no different. So we believe the proposed ads you saw offer a neutral tone, and we'll definitely work with the creative team when it comes to selecting or producing new imagery, just to make sure that everyone is represented. So for our process, like I mentioned, we adapt messaging to resonate with the Spanish-speaking audiences, both culturally and linguistically. And we may adjust a few words here and there, but overall maintain like the tone and emotional impact. And we find that for digital ads, there usually isn't much of a difference, but sometimes for radio and video, when we're limited to specific like timing, because Spanish language can sometimes be a little bit longer, we need a couple more words to say something smaller in English. You may find that it's not going to be a direct translation. And that's why we're referring to it as a transcreation. But ultimately, the overall tone and message will be the same. We just might have to condense a few words here and there. Yeah, and as I mentioned, we maintain the brand voice while adapting language for different dialects and regional preferences. I believe for these advertisements, we're going to keep like a more friendly, informal tone. And so if we move on to the next slide. Now I would just want to go over our social media toolkit. So our quarterly toolkits will provide CAA, and this will also be available to partners with ready-to-use content for Facebook, Instagram, and X in both English and Spanish over like the course of a year. The overall intent of the toolkit is to help streamline messaging while keeping the public informed and engaged in the latest recycling efforts. So each toolkit will include 6 posts. That's approximately like 2 per month. And this will just help maintain an audience engagement like on a constant. These will be provided in the form of an editorial calendar with suggested publish dates and guidance on timing for just maximum impact. The proposed content mix will help ensure variety and impact. We're providing 1 short video, 3, and this is like 15 to 30 seconds, 3 infographics for clear, more digestible information, and then 2 graphics with stock imagery, graphics or stock imagery posts. And this is just to help reinforce the messaging. And now this is an example. This is an outline which represents the first set of posts to be developed. And I just want to kind of make this clear. It's not final content, but more so a preview of general topics with key messaging and visual themes for review. And each post is designed to address a critical aspect of the recycling system with clear and engaging messaging. So for this first one, we're partnership and investment. We're highlighting collaboration between brands, government, and recyclers investing millions over the next 3 years. And the proposed visuals and infographics. So this might like illustrate key stakeholders and investment figures just to show the scale of the commitment. The next one explains changes in accepted recyclables and encourages checking local guidelines. And again, we would probably just put a little visual here, just showing like the difference. Transparency in end markets. This shows how recyclables like perhaps like a jar of mayonnaise would get secondhand life in new products. And the suggested visual here would be a short animated video. For post 4, expanding access. Here we would say something about, announcing the growth in recycling services, including 200,000 new curbside pickups, 100 trucks, and 135 new centers. We suggest another infographic here just to help distill like these numbers. For motivating participation, this will call attention to the 2.2 million pounds of recyclables ending up in Oregon landfills daily and the efforts that we're making to change that. Again, a visual here would be an infographic comparing perhaps landfill waste with potential recycling recovery. And then the last one, reinforcing social norms. This will be more like reminding the public that 80% of Oregonians support recycling and just encouraging participation. So for this, we'll have another graphic that just helps get this message across. And again, I want to reiterate that this is in final copy, but more so just an initial framework to ensure alignment before we finalize copy and visuals. And if we go to the next slide, here is an example. Well, these next two slides actually are examples of content that could be featured in the toolkit, just demonstrating how the message and the visuals will work together for engagement. So this is not final, and this visual is a very basic example. We'd provide more design, color, and everything to help make it more eye-catching for the audience. But the content could read something like, major upgrades are coming to Oregon's recycling system over the next few years. Brands, governments, and recycling companies are teaming up to improve recycling programs and operations, with brands investing tens of millions of dollars, all in an effort to make recycling simpler and more effective for everyone. Learn more at recycleon.org. If we go to the next one, this is an example with like a video post, and the video provided here on the side is more for placement only and really just showing the type of video we could provide. But the content could read something like, ever wonder where your recycling goes? Now Oregon recycling facilities will have more transparency, ensuring materials get a second life. A mayo jar can become another jar, a carpet, or clothing. Watch this video to see what happens to a mayo jar after it's collected. And that's it from us.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was great. It was nice just getting to see some of those updates for batch 4. So thank you all for being here and sharing that with us. I hope everyone else is also excited to download all of these materials for review and to start taking a look at those 2 feedback surveys that are due on Friday, March 28th. So we are going to close out with some next steps. As mentioned earlier, if you attended today's webinar, you don't need to attend the webinar scheduled for next Tuesday. That is a repeat webinar to give folks another opportunity to join live. The feedback surveys for the educational materials shown today are live, so we look forward to hearing from you no later than Friday, March 28th, and Emily will drop those 2 feedback surveys for you again in chat so you can bookmark them if you're excited to jump in and start reviewing. So please keep an eye out for upcoming emails from me, which will include a recording of today's webinar, a link to the feedback surveys again to make sure folks have them, and more information on future education and outreach trainings. And one final plug to anyone not yet on our education and outreach mailing list. If you haven't been receiving update emails from me, please fill out our contact form that Emily will drop in the chat one more time for folks. Again, a reminder, if you have filled this out before, you do not need to fill it out again. And we are going to use the last of our time together for some additional Q&A. If we do still have some questions out there, again, please feel free to drop those into the Q&A section. Before we jump into that, again, we just wanted to thank everybody for spending your time with us today and for engaging with this process to make this effort really successful. Again, another big thank you for the Batch 1B feedback provided this month that we're working through. A reminder for anyone that may need to hop, this webinar will be posted on CAA's website, and we'll send a thank you email with that location and a link to these feedback surveys again. So please keep an eye out for that email. That will come from me. So thank you again. Please stick around if you have some additional questions to drop into the Q&A. And if not, we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your feedback survey responses.
Thank you, Sam. Let's do a couple answers. We've got a few minutes left. So let's see. There's a question about some information that will be on the public-facing website, recycleon.org, and asking if it will share where materials goes. That is still in the scoping phase, so we will let you know on that one kind of as that moves forward a little bit. Haven't looked too closely at what the requirements are there, but that is something that we would like to get to at some point. Whether or not it will be right off the bat, something we'll have to look at. Let's see, and Francesca, we've got a couple questions that it looks like might be directed at you. So we can start with what does get the latest mean in the banner ads?
That's really trying to drive people to recycleon.org so that they can go get the latest information. All of the advertising will be driving to that place as a first stop from the ad and the call to action.
Excellent. And then I can add a little bit here, but maybe you can actually start out with this one. So, is it intentional not to mention the responsible end markets in layman's terms is mentioned in the commercial ad? It seems like a perfect opportunity to build trust in the system that all currently accepted materials and future materials are being recycled. The meta stuff captures it, but is it just too much to have in the commercials?
Yeah, definitely a space constraint. We only have 30 seconds in our radio and our video spots, so we can't fit in all of the benefits that the program's delivering. So we're trying to do that by having different versions of the different materials and also covering that idea of responsible end markets and what happens to materials after they are collected in our social toolkit video as well.
Excellent. Thank you. There was a question about printing materials, and if we have a rough cost estimate, that's probably not something that CAA would share moving forward, what the costs are, but that cost is covered by CAA. So if there was a follow-up question to that, will digital files be available if jurisdictions can find cheaper printing companies? Yeah, local governments and service providers are allowed to print their own materials. So if that's something that you're interested in and you want to print them, that wouldn't be covered by CAA in the cases where you're just taking the digital file and printing it specifically. There would be ways to have that covered if it was another option. It looks like this is talking about the $3 per capita contamination reduction funding, and that is fully different and I know very confusing from E&O. So the OOPS tag that was shown earlier would be covered by that $3 per capita contamination reduction funding, which DEQ will lay out approved activities for. And so that would kind of be through them and then submitted for CAA. So the costs for printing those materials would be fully borne by the local government service provider for those ones. If you do have follow-up questions on that, either talk to your DEQ RMA folks or feel free to reach out to our team directly. And it looks like we have 2 minutes left. So let's see. Confirming that CAA and TRP are working on creating the photorealistic illustrations for the other streams, garbage, compost, etc., so that we can create similar materials. And yes, that is correct. We are working on those. Those should be released, I believe, in April as well. Right. Is CAA using a DEI-focused purchasing process? Yeah, outlined in the program plan is a little bit more on how CAA plans to use COVID purchasing and some of the metrics behind that. So I'd recommend checking out the program plan to learn a little more there. And it looks like we are right at time. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you TRP and C+C for the work that you've put into creating these materials. As a reminder, we will be sending out an email from the Recycling Partnership with more information, the recordings, the surveys, which were also dropped in the chat. And there is another webinar, which will be this same material on the 25th. Yeah, okay, great. Just going off memory on that one. And the survey closes on the 28th. So keep an eye out, lots of things going on. Thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing all of your feedback.